Good morning, crime community. I'm here to read out Poisoner in Chief, Part 3, Operation Midnight Climax. Excuse me. Starting with Subproject 68. Like many other MK Ultra collaborators, Cameron was unaware, at least at the beginning, that he was working for the CIA. Gottlieb kept the agency double protected. First, he channeled money through what seemed to be a legitimate foundation. Second, he used Maitland Baldwin as his emissary, making it appear that Subproject 68 was civilian research. The contract specified what it would entail. 1. The breaking down of ongoing patterns of the patient's behavior by means of particular intensive electroshocks, depatterning. 2. The intensive repetition 16 hours a day for 6 or 7 days of the prearranged verbal signal. 3. During the period of intensive repetition, the patient is kept in partial sensory isolation. 4. Repression of the driving period is carried out by putting the patient, after the conclusion of the period, into continuous sleep for 7 to 10 days. That sounds like a coma to me, folks. Over the next several years, the CIA sent Cameron $69,000 to carry out these and other experiments aimed at finding ways to wipe out memory and implant new thoughts into people's brains. During this period, according to the historian Alfred McCoy, approximately 100 patients admitted that the Allen Institute was moderate emotional problems, became unwitting and unwilling subjects in an extreme form of behavioral experimentation. One day on 55, the CIA officer who was Gottlieb's liaison to Cameron wrote in his diary, Dr. G made clear my job was to ensure acceptable deniability operations all times in Montreal. A review conducted decades later concluded that Cameron's techniques had no therapeutic validity whatsoever and were ever capable to Nazi medical atrocities. While the experiments were underway, however, Gottlieb found them irresistible. As soon as one was completed, he sent Cameron money to conduct more. During the years, Gottlieb was sponsoring experiments that pushed treatment subjects to the limit of endurance and beyond. He maintained a stable and happy home life. By all appearances, he was a loving husband and good father to his 4 children. He adapted remarkably well to rural life, happily making goats, collecting eggs, helping to tend the family's gardens. His life was strikingly bifurcated. By day, he directed research that required the sustained infliction of intense mental and physical pain. On evenings and weekends, he was not only the model dad, but also strikingly spiritual. Few Americans of Gottlieb's generation, or any generation, had come lives so seriously different from their work lives. Gottlieb cannot have failed to see the Jekyll and Hyde contradiction, yet he could reconcile it. He was an individualist who could tell himself that he was working to protect humanity against an enemy whose goal was to wipe out away all possibility of individualistic life. By living outside the suburban mainstream, cultivating his spirituality and seeking closeness to nature, he was following a personal path that was strikingly unconventional. At work, he was doing the same, rejecting the limits that circumscribed more conventional minds and daring to follow his endless fertile imagination. A chemist who is not a mystic is not a real chemist, the inventor of LSD, Albert Hofmann, said toward the end of his long life. He doesn't comprehend it. I think Dr. Hoffman comprehended it. He invented it. A job was for a tough guy became vacant at the beginning of 1955, district supervisor of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics Office in San Francisco. The Bureau's legendary director, Harry Anslinger, named his most flamboyant agent, George Hunter White, to fill it. That might have been a loss of MK Ultra, since White was then luring unsuspecting victims to his safe house in New York and dosing them with LSD or whatever other drug Gottlieb wanted them to test. Gottlieb, however, saw a way to take advantage of the transfer. He would hire White to set up a safe house in San Francisco where he could do everything he had done in New York and more. He became MKUltra's Subproject 42. White called it Operation Midnight Climax. The subproject had intertwined goals. First was to feed drugs to unsuspecting civilians and observe their reactions, as had been done in New York. This time, through sex, would be added to the mix. As Gottlieb's direction, White assembled a group of prostitutes whose job would be to bring clients to the pad and dose them with LSD while watching and recording their reactions. White plunged into his new assignment. He set up his pad. It was never called an apartment or a safe house. At 225 Chestnut Street on Telegraph Hill, it was laid out in an L shape and had a lovely view of San Francisco Bay. As renting it, White called a friend who owned an electronics shop and asked him to install surveillance equipment so that he could monitor what happened inside. The friend wired 4 DD4 microphones disguised as wall outlets to 2 F301 tape recorders that he installed in a listening post next door. The CIA officer who visited after the work was completed reported that the place was so wired up that if you spilled a glass of water, you'd probably electrocute yourself. The San Francisco pad was decorated in a style that might be called bordello chic. Pictures of can-can dancers along with framed Toulouse-Lautrec prints on black silk mats decorated the walls. The bedroom featured red curtains and large mirrors. Some drawers were filled with tools of the trade, including sex toys and photos of manacled women in black stockings and studded leather halters. We had a comprehensive library on Chestnut Street. One agent who worked there later testified, the most pornographic library I ever saw. Dirty movies, pictures, everything the CIA put in there because of teaching these whores how to hump and how to, I'll show you and what, to accommodate his prostitutes, his clients, and himself. White kept the bar well stocked. Several of his associates, and that he often watched the proceedings from next door while drinking from a pitcher of martinis and sitting on a portable toilet. Sure enough, among documents that the CIA later declassified as an expense report he filed on August 3rd, 55, that included this entry. 1. Portable toilet, 24 disposable bags at 15 cents each. 360 equals $28.60. Gottlieb took an all-or-nothing approach to documentation. So far as it is known, he wrote nothing substantial about this year's experiments in secret prisons around the world. Yet in matters of expense and office details, he was meticulous. At Operation Midnight Climax pad was being prepared in San Francisco, he composed a lengthy memo approving the purchase of each item used to furnish it. He listed more than 100, including drapes, pillows, lamps, ashtrays, an ice bucket, a box spring with mattress, a waste basket, and a vacuum cleaner, along with more curious items, including an easel and an unfinished painting, 2 busts, 2 statues, and a telescope. Gottlieb also sent White a detailed memo setting out, with his usual precision, the mutual administrative responsibilities of the principal research investigator and the sponsor. It stipulates that White must maintain funds in a separate bank account, often a receipt or invoice wherever possible, periodically including a general statement of the use of liquor and a note taxi expenses by date. The only expenses Gottlieb did not want itemized were payments to prostitutes. Due to the highly unorthodox nature of these activities and the considerable risk incurred by these individuals, he wrote, it is impossible to require that they provide a receipt for these payments or that they indicate the precise manner in which the funds were spent. Although White had been deeply immersed in the New York de Monde, he was a newcomer to San Francisco. For help, he turned to a former military intelligence officer named Ira Ike Feldman, who had done bare-knuckle work in Europe and Korea. Feldman had retired to California with the vague idea of running a chicken farm. Before long, I get a call, this time from White. He recalled years later. We understand you're back in the States, he says. I want you to come to work for the Bureau of Narcotics. He was 54 or 55. White was district supervisor in San Francisco. I went in. I go to room 114 of the federal building, and there was his first time I meet George White. He was a big, powerful man with a completely bald head. Not tall, but big, fat. He shaved his head and had the most beautiful blue eyes you've ever seen. Ike, he says, we want you as an agent. Feldman took the job. For the next several months, he did undercover work for the Narcotics Bureau. He ran a sting operation in which he posed as a pimp, and as he later testified, had half a dozen girls working for me. In another, he used a drug-addicted prostitute to entrap drug users, paying her with doses of heroin. White was impressed. One day, White called me into his office, he recalled. Ike, he says, you've been doing one hell of a job as an undercover man. Now I'm going to give you another assignment. We want you to test mind-bending drugs. If we can find out just how good this stuff works, we'll be doing a great deal for your country. Few former intelligence officers could resist such a patriotic pitch, especially at the height of the Cold War. The next time Gottlieb was in San Francisco, Feldman met with him. Gottlieb began by opening his briefcase, pulling out a small glass vial, and laying it down on the table in front of him. You know what that is? He asked Feldman. Geez, I don't know what the hell that is. It's LSD. We want you and your contacts. We want you to get all the broads in San Francisco, and you get all the hookers, and we want you to start putting this in people's drinks. What, are you crazy? I mean, I could get arrested or something. Don't worry about it. What does it do? Well, we got about 50 different things we're going to try. This particular stuff here will drive a guy nuts or a woman nuts. It's out of this world. I don't know, Sydney. I do intelligence work, but I'm not doing that fucking bullshit. Gottlieb then pulled out the argument that he knew would resolve Feldman's doubts, just as it had resolved his own. We can find out just how good this stuff works. You'll be doing a great deal for your country, he said. It's a matter of national security. Isn't it always? Every case is national security. If we get done, that will bend these guys' minds and talk to them, make them go crazy. This will do a lot to save our prisoners and things like that. That persuaded Feldman to return to his country's covert service. His first assignment was to recruit the prostitutes who would work at unwittingly MKUltra contractors. Each time one of them bought a client to 225 Chestnut Street, she would be paid $50 to $100. As a bonus, she would be given a get-out-of-jail-free card. With White's phone numbers, the next time she was arrested, she would give the number to the police, and White would arrange for her release. I would go to various bars, various massage parlors, and these cunts all throughout. I was a racketeer, Feldman later told an interviewer. He might, for example, want to see whether the subject working on a covert aviation program would reveal its secrets. I says, honey, I want you to do me a favor for me. And I says, I want you to pick up Joe Blow, take him to the apartment, give him a blowjob, and while he's there, I want you to ask him, hey, you know about that airplane? How high does it fly? Intelligence agencies have for centuries used female agents to seduce men in order to learn their secrets. Gottlieb wanted to systemize the study of how sex, especially in combination with drugs, could loosen men's tongues. He found remarkably little published work to guide him. Most of the research that Dr. Alfred Kinzer reported in sexual behavior in the human male was too clinical to be much use. It would be another decade before Masters and Johnson published their groundbreaking study, Human Sexual Response, and still longer before Frank's works like The Happy Hooker and The Height Report on male sexuality would appear. Gottlieb decided that the CIA would conduct its own research into how people behave during and after sex. He had already deeply engaged in drug experiments. Operation Midnight Climax gave those experiments a new overlay. Okay, we're going to end here, and tomorrow we'll be talking about San Francisco, Midnight Climax, and I think After we get through tomorrow, then we're going to come to the conclusion of this chapter. So I say, if you like and enjoy my scream at all, like and subscribe. Have a good day.